Hey Matt, how you doing?
Good.
Good. So obviously you had a couple of good centers available at that spot. What did you like about Josh over those other guys?
Well, first of all, I'm excited to be here to talk about Josh. He's a great kid. He's smart. He's tough. He's strong. Typical Ohio State guy. Loves ball. Highly successful kid from a really good lineage in his family. His dad and his brother played at Kentucky. His mom's a Hall of Famer at Dayton for basketball, and it's really important for Josh to be another great offensive lineman out of Ohio State, which he is.
Matt Schneidman.
Matt, how versatile is he? Can he play the other interior spots, do you think?
He can. He played center at Ohio State, but he's an athletic kid. He's big. He's really strong, as I said before. That's not an issue at all.
Rob Rachel.
Matt, how much work did you guys, or in person, get to see him in terms of the medical side of things coming off that foot? Have your doctors look at him, or just why did you feel comfortable enough, in terms of that injury, to kind of proceed with the pick?
Yeah, as far as the medical stuff, guys, I don't get into any of that, but it's not an issue. We picked him. I mean, it's not a concern. All that, we're extremely thorough with our process, and whether it's Doc McKenzie or Flea or some of the other guys, that everybody gets looked at bumper to bumper. So we feel really good about it.
Rob Domofsky.
Hey, Matt, obviously I know you guys love the versatile lineman that can play a bunch
Rob,
of spots, but
are you wearing a tie?
no, I took it off. Thanks. I'm at home. I got shorts on. I know you guys love the versatile offensive lineman, but do you think you guys will just start him out at center because that's his natural spot?
I mean, he can do that, but I don't want to pin him to one exact thing, but I know he can play all three. If center's the best spot for him to play for us, he'll play center. If it's guard, he'll play guard. But you're going to enjoy this kid, Rob. He's got a lot of energy. He's smart. He's tough. He's a really good addition to the Packer organization.
Mark Daniels.
Hey, Matt, you got me okay?
Hey. Yeah.
Matt, can you just talk about his movement skills? Once the ball snapped, how he gets around, how he handles himself in and out of space.
Yeah. So he's quick to snap and step. He can run the zone stuff. He's got good body control in space. As I keep saying, he's a strong moving athlete, but he's coordinated and fundamentally sound. So he's not falling all over himself, which is really important in an interior offensive lineman for us. And whether you talk to Steno or Luke, being able to use your quickness and strength and stay on your feet is his skill set, and it's what made us so attracted to him. And I had the opportunity to see him play this year, so that always helps, especially with how crazy this past year was. It was games because you couldn't go to practices, but it was still really helpful to see him in person.
Mike Spofford.
Yeah, Matt, did he show you guys anything character-wise, just in terms of trying to play through that injury, that tough injury he had late in the season, and trying to gut that out?
No, but that's him, and that's most of the kids at Ohio State. That's how they are. And yes, he did, and he's extremely tough, and it's important for him to be a great player. And those are characteristics, whether you look at Stokes, whether you look at him, these guys are wired right. They love ball and they love practice, and they do the little things right, which is what we try to bring into this organization.
Brian Wood.
Hey, Matt, just because there is some opportunity to compete on the interior of that offensive line, is he a plug-and-play guy, or what kind of transitional things do you think he'll need to take care of to get into the next level?
Well, as you know, it's a jump for all these players coming from college, so I'm not going to sit here and say he's an instant starter because, none of us know that till they get here. But he certainly will have an opportunity to compete for a spot, which is why we drafted him, which is why we draft all these guys. So the opportunity will certainly be there. But as you know, in this league, the only way you get a job is by taking a job away from someone else, which is why it makes it so competitive.
Mike Clemens.
Hey, Matt, Kirk Herbstreit just said on ABC, every time he's done a broadcast covering Ohio State for production meetings, the Buckeyes would bring down Josh. Yeah. Is there a story in terms of his communication skills that jumped off the page for you?
Yeah, he's a 2020 team captain there, and that's a big deal, especially as an offensive lineman. And as I said before, it's very important for him to be viewed along the lines of those great Ohio State centers. I mean, he's going to graduate in consumer science this May. He's a good student. He's football smart. He loves ball. He's in the building. I mean, he is the perfect representative for Ohio State. And that comes out of their building, whether it's their strength coach, their offensive line coach. He's what you want, whether you were running a corporation or a football team.
Steve McGargy.
As a brother and a dad who played collegiately too, how much is that something y'all look at all, like kind of the bloodlines there when it comes from a family of players like that?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt. You look at some former players here, but Clay Matthews had lineage, and I know it's different, and I'm not saying that, but we always do look for that. Asante Samuel in this year's draft, J.C. Horn, guys whose parents have been involved, even if it's not just football, that have had success. Growing up in that home, things are a little bit different, and no different than examples that parents teach their children. So it never hurts, and it's always good to know. Ted was really big on that. God rest his soul. I worked with him for quite a while, and he was big on lineage. So it's not something that you have to have, but it's always something to be really good to be aware of.
Tom Silverstein.
Hey, Matt, at 6'5", how did he wind up at center? And how does he use that as an advantage? And how do people use that against him?
Yeah, well, I can't speak to how – I know he wanted to play center and they had a need and he met it. But he can bend. So it's not like he's fallen all over himself. And, to have those long levers and to be able to have that kind of size, you can cover those interior guys up. And then when you're running the reach blocks, you're just longer than a 6'2" guy, and you can get there quicker. And he's a big, powerful man. I hope I answered your question, but
I was curious. You don't see a ton of 6'5" centers. I mean, maybe you do more a little bit now, but is there something about that height at that position now that in your zone game that makes it beneficial?
No. I mean, you always like to have big guys. We prefer a 6'5" guy over a 6'2" guy or 6'3" even. But it just comes down, in his particular case, the wiring, the movement skills, and he happened to be 6'5", and that's great because we certainly want to keep this team big.
Aaron Nagler.
Matt, you've been asked a couple times, and you've mentioned a couple times Ohio State, the program itself,
Yep.
where he's coming out of. How important is that when you're drafting somebody with a premium pick, second rounder? You do expect him to come in and compete. The fact that he is coming from a big program that does some really high-level stuff on offense, the importance there as far as coming into the pros.
Sure, and I worked with Ryan in San Francisco, so I'm familiar with that staff. But when you talk about Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, programs like that play in the championship games, these guys practice against each other too. So you got big bodies practicing against big bodies, and a lot of these guys are going to go on to the NFL. So yeah, that does matter because most of the development comes in practice, and they're facing future NFL players. So it kind of iron sharpens iron type of deal.
We'll do two more. Olivia Reiner.
Matt, you mentioned you got to see him in person this past season. Which game did you get to see, and what stood out to you in the flesh?
Yeah, well, I saw Ohio State versus Michigan State and Northwestern. What stood out to me, especially this year, because of all the restrictions at universities, you try to get there as early as you possibly can before the game because Ohio State has this process where they come out in position groups and they do stuff. So it's almost like watching a practice before a game. I guess what stood out for me was just his way, his sturdiness, his demeanor, his positive energy. I mean, you're not team captain at a place like that, and you go hide in the corner. And I'm not saying you have to be a rah-rah guy, but he's a guy that other guys gravitate toward, which, once again, talking about the energy is something that we want to continue to bring into this team.
And last one, Bill Huber.
Yeah, one of his teammates called him an aggressive, nasty player. Does that show up? Is that a fair assessment?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Really clean but aggressive, and absolutely. I mean, he moves big people, and you feel him out there. So I can see why opponents would say that, and even his own teammates would say that. But can't express to you how excited we are organizationally to bring him in, what he brings to this organization as far as a competitive nature. And look, he'll have to earn it like everybody else. I mean, nothing's given in this league. But things are stacked in his favor that he's the right kind of guy you want to go out there with. And, I have full confidence that he'll give his best effort. And, we'll see what happens, after that. But we anticipate good things.